Hi, my name is Jessica Zarati, and I'm going to be talking about Selena and La Bamba. So, Selena is a movie about a young girl that grows up in a very musical family. Her dad was a part of a band called Los Dinos, and he really wants to get Selena a part of music as well because she's such a good singer. So, he ends up buying band equipment for her and her siblings, and they end up becoming a little band. And they play at some small gigs. They do a lot of stuff, but a lot of people end up liking them. He ends up becoming their manager, and they just take off from there, going on tour. They find a new guitarist who actually ends up marrying Selena, and they do a lot of gigs. Selena has to actually end up, her family speaks Spanish, but she does not, and her dad really wants her to sing in Spanish because he wants her to really embrace her culture, so she has to actually end up learning Spanish to be able to sing these songs. And because of that, it actually brings up one social concern to her father because they're actually going to go play a gig in Mexico. And he's very nervous for Selena because she doesn't speak fluent Spanish. So he doesn't think that the people there will think she's Mexican enough. He thinks they might criticize her a lot. So he's just very nervous for her. Some political agendas that are actually brought up in the film is the biggest one, I think, is probably when Yolanda ends up killing Selena. She's supposed to be the handler of the money from the fans, getting the money that the fans send in, sending them back their merchandise, and she ends up keeping all the money for herself. All this money comes up missing. So when Selena and them go actually to confront her, she ends up shooting and killing Selena, which I guess must have been in her mind, the only way out of that predicament. And then for an artistic evaluation of Selena, I believe she was very artistic with her talent and her music. Her voice was absolutely beautiful. Her dancing, she danced a lot during her concerts, and she really, connected with her culture, especially growing up not knowing Spanish. She ended up singing beautiful Spanish, speaking Spanish, and she really was able to connect with her culture and with herself, connect more with her father before she passed, and yeah. So then for La Bamba, La Bamba is kind of a similar story to Selena. It's about a boy named Richie Valenzuela, and he grows up, unlike Selena. Selena grew up in a little bit, like, she wasn't rich, but she always had nice things. But Richie actually grew up in a poor environment, and when his brother Bob came back, he gave him and his mother money, and they ended up moving out, getting their own house. And so he grew up to that. He was going to school, and he actually ended up meeting this girl named Donna that he really liked. And he would walk her home and see the neighborhood that she lived in, and he would tell her, this is the kind of neighborhood I want to buy my mom a house in. So he already had big dreams to buy his mother a house, but his biggest dream was to be a rock and roll singer. So like Selena, he was musically gifted, and he wanted to become a singer, rock and roll. There was never a time where you didn't see him with his guitar, always wanting to play and sing. So after they moved into this house, he actually met up with a group called the Silhouettes. It was a little local band, and they ended up taking him in so he could play rock and roll with them. So he was playing rock and roll with them, and then there came this point. His mother was always been very supportive of his dreams, so his mother actually went to book this big place for them to have a big gig, really get them out there, and the leader of the Silhouettes actually ended up not liking it. He didn't want Richie's mother to be, their manager or anything. So he said no, they didn't want to play the gig, and Richie and the other band members believed that it was a really good opportunity, so they actually ended up leaving the lead member and being their own thing. They played the gig, they did great, and at the gig actually was a music producer from Hollywood. His name was Bob, like Richie's brother, and he ended up wanting to sign Richie to Delphi Records. So some social concerns that were in La Bamba, I would say the biggest one was probably between Donna's parents and Richie. Donna's dad saw Richie walking Donna home from school one day, and he didn't really have the most approving attitude towards him. And then once Donna started actually continuously seeing Richie, her dad just didn't like it. He would always tell, whenever Richie would call, he would tell him that Donna was not home, Donna wasn't there, and it really put a barrier between Donna and Richie. Richie didn't understand why, and being Donna being a white girl with her her parents that probably looked at Richie. He's always carrying around his guitar. His dad didn't really want her around him because he felt that he was a bad influence with the type of music he played, the type of look he had, being Mexican and stuff. So he had some social concerns about that. He didn't really want Donna being around him. He even bought Donna a car so that she wouldn't walk home with Richie anymore. Some political agendas that were in La Bamba was when Richie actually first becomes a part of the Silhouettes, kind of like I talked about before, about how Richie's mother wanted to get the big place for their gig. The leader didn't want any part of it. He didn't want to do it. He didn't think, it was the right move, which it eventually ended up being the right move. But he didn't think it was the right move. So his agenda was a lot different than Richie's. I just feel like because Richie was the new kid in the band, the lead didn't want anyone taking over his band, because before Richie, it was his band. And then when Richie came, he actually ended up making it better, and it kind of became Richie's band. So I think that was a political agenda. And then for artistic valuation for Richie, just like Selena, he's very artistic with his music. He really connected with his culture because he ended up singing La Bamba, and he too, like Selena, did not speak Spanish, had to learn to sing in Spanish to sing that song, which he really wanted to sing because his producer Bob told him that he needed two songs to sing at this band on TV, like this TV show for the band, and he wanted to pick La Bamba, and the producer said that it's a little too folk. He doesn't really want to do it, and Richie convinced him that he can turn it to rock and roll the way he sings it, and he ended up doing it, and it was great. So he was very musically talented. He was always carrying around his guitar, like I said, and he too, kind of like Selena, came from an artistic family. Unlike Selena, though, his parents weren't as artistic, but his brother actually was a drawer, and he ended up winning a drawing contest and got this free like easel and all this stuff to paint on. So he did too come from a pretty talented family as well. So both movies have a lot of cultural diversity. Selena learning Spanish to go sing in Mexico. Richie learning Spanish to sing his last song, La Bamba. They're very connected in certain ways. Both stars were killed tragically. Selena being shot by Yolanda, and Richie was actually in a plane crash, and he ended up dying. And it was weird in that movie because he actually has always had a fear of flying, and he always dreamt about a plane crashing and stuff. So it was very, very coincidental that he was scared of that, and his death was actually in a plane. But they were both amazing artists. They both inspired many people. Selena still today inspires a lot of young Latino women all around the world. Richie as well for Latino men. So their legacies will always live on.